Mr. President, over and over again, supporters of these types of trade agreements have told us about how many jobs they would create, how beneficial they would be for the middle class and working class of this country. But over and over again, virtually everything they told us turned out to be wrong, and they are wrong again in terms of the TPP. In 1993, President Bill Clinton promised that NAFTA would create 1 million American jobs in 5 years.
And create 200,000 jobs in this country by 1995 alone.
Instead, NAFTA has led to the loss of almost 700,000 jobs. In 1999, we were promised that permanent normal trade relations with China would open up the Chinese economy to American-made goods and services. Instead, that trade agreement has cost us some 2.7 million American jobs. And I remember hearing all of the accolades about free trade with China. They all turned out to be wrong. In 2011, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce told us that the South Korean free trade agreement would create some 280,000 jobs. Well, wrong again. Instead, that agreement has led to the loss of some 75,000 jobs.
This is an agreement being hammered out by global corporations in their benefit. It is an investors' rights agreement. It is not a free trade agreement.
Ladies and gentlemen, in an increasingly integrated global economy,
with this Trans-Pacific Partnership, we are writing the rules for the global economy. And unlike past trade agreements, these standards are actually enforceable.
This agreement will level the playing field for American goods and services.
To level the playing field for American workers and businesses. And when the playing field is level and the rules are fair, Americans can outcompete anybody in the world.
given a level playing field, Canadians can compete with the best in the world and win.
They can expand and support good jobs here at home.
To create more good jobs for Canadians.
Our exports support roughly 12 million American jobs.
Trade is responsible for 1 in every 5 Canadian jobs.
And they're jobs that typically pay better than other jobs.
And jobs linked to trade pay better than average wages, often significantly better.
And if we can create exports, it makes it more likely somebody's going to have good work.
Japan, for example.
Japan.
The Liberal Party is a pro-trade party. We understand how important trade is for economic growth,
Economic growth,
creating jobs.
for job creating.
Some of the largest economies in the world coming together to sign a deal. It is important that Canada be part of it.
With this agreement, the largest economic partnership in the history of the world.
And isn't it interesting that when the global community gets together to sign and negotiate difficult and complex environmental agreements, they happen out in the open, is that this is not a free trade agreement in the sense that we are used to. And it is not even being negotiated between sovereign governments. It is actually being negotiated between large corporate entities in various sectors.
A trade agreement based on other trade agreements, which in fact have cost us millions of decent paying jobs and have led to a race to the bottom. Well, let's talk about who is supporting the TPP. Turns out that virtually every major multinational corporation.
And from these corporate interests, unelected on the other side of the world, who would like nothing more than to subordinate the lawmaking power of this chamber.
This is a provision which has gotten far too little attention, and that is the investor-state dispute settlement. That sounds like a highly technical term. What in God's name does that mean? And what it does mean in English is that it will allow large multinational corporations to sue governments, not just in the United States, but all over the world, if those governments pass legislation that hurts their expected future profits. It's not for raising wages or creating jobs. It is to protect corporate profits. And unbelievably, what this legislation is prepared to do is to undermine basic democracy. That's really extraordinary. I thought that our job as members of the United States Senate, I thought the job of people in Australia who represent their government, people democratically elected all over the world, I had the idea that maybe their function was to represent as best they could the needs of the people who voted for them. I guess that's a radical and crazy idea.